I always kind of have an audience in my head that I'm aiming toward. Not always, but sometimes. If I'm playing an ex-convict, I want this part to be in film to be accepted by convicts, ex-convicts. I want them to say, yeah, that's the way it is. You got it right. Well, if I can get it to them, if I get it past them, that's all I can hope for, is to be authentic in that sense to the person or the profession of that we're doing. The same was true of whatever things that I've been involved in, where people said, yes, that's the way they knew. And it wasn't to my credit, it was to Pakula, Billy, and Redford's for All the President's Men. That's the way it is in a newsroom. That's the way it was then to be in journalism. I remember I did Rain Man, and because Tom Cruise was always getting work, I was able to research for about two and a half years, and it wasn't the finesse of technology today. So I met people, parents who were parents of Down syndrome kids, of autistic kids. I went to hospitals. I was able, because I was famous, I was able to gain entry into places where I normally wouldn't, and also see film footage. So I was trying to find this so-called character, and I would meet autistic people, and finally I got 3 guys who were all autistic, and when Barry Levinson, who was not the first director, but came on as the final director before we started shooting, I said, I got 3 guys, Barry. He says, well, can I meet them all? And he met them, and I showed him how I was kind of working off each of them. He says, I like this one specific guy, I like his rhythm, and we picked that guy. There's so much information that goes into these people. They're like, and I realized then, it's stuff I had learned from research I had done, that we have vacuum cleaners in our brain, meaning we vacuum out a tremendous amount of information from moment to moment or day to day. These type of autistic savants don't. And it crowds their brain to the point where they can barely function. Meaning, this character, these type of people would remember every piece of clothing that everyone on the crew is wearing. They would remember everything about the room, not consciously. It's just there. And the next day, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, minutely remember everything about the day. And our vacuum cleaners vacuum it out. We, depending on the person, remember the essentials. Rain Man, when we had a bunch of doctors up to see a cut of the film, in a screening of it at the studio, and that was one of the great moments I ever had. They said, the director, Barry Levinson, he said, tell us what we should change. What's wrong? And they said, no, you got it. What you did is accurate. I wanted to do this project I was very, very scared of doing, and it was an ex-convict. And it was called, the book was called No Beast So Fierce. And the guy that wrote it in prison, actually wrote it in San Quentin. And he said he was the youngest convict to ever, he was 18 when he started doing time there. And he wrote this book about his life, and it became a film which I did called Straight Time. It didn't have a lot of success. I think the studios in the 70s, or the studio in the 70s didn't think it was commercial. And they I think would have had a better time today. But I had to play an ex-convict, and I said to Eddie Bunker, the guy who wrote it, I says, Eddie, I'm so wrong. He says, no, you can play this part. I says, Eddie, I'm not a physical person. I don't even know how to make a fist. He says, you don't need a fist. All you need is a pipe. And he says, I said, well, let's say I'm in a bunk in a prison cell, and a guy tries to rape me in the middle of the night. He says, you just hit him on the head with a pipe and try to kill him. That's all you do. He says, if you kill him, he says, you get more time or whatever, and if you don't, word gets around very quickly, and you're going to be left alone. I got smuggled into San Quentin, which is another story, where I was in the warden's office, about 90 or 30, 40 guys on typewriters in the 70s, and I had a convict in there called Mike McNabb, who was doing life for blowing a guy's head off with a shotgun in a cocaine deal that went bad, and he was going to be my bodyguard. and we got through to the padre, or whatever, his father who worked in the prison. And this was a series of months because I had done the so-called tours. And I went into a bathroom there where the guy's typing for the warden, and I had clothing that I put on. And at that time, I didn't get recognized because I had these long sideburns, and I had this, which was a kind of typical look of a convict with a knit cap and dark sunglasses. It was like a way so many of them looked, and I kind of blended in. So I put on the prison stuff, and they then smuggled me in the prison with Mike McNabb, and I spent almost a whole day walking on until I got thrown against a wall by a guard who asked to see my pass, and of course I didn't have it. He patted me down, and he said, "What's this?" And I said, "Oh, it's a pearl recorder," and it was a tape recorder that I had in my, it's kind of like a pea coat, that prison thing I was wearing. And he said, "Well, what is this?" And I started singing Mrs. Robinson as fast as I could. He didn't think it was funny. But anyways, the point that I was there for about 5-6 hours. It was a much different experience than getting a tour. It was fascinating experience for me. But the point I wanted to make is what Eddie told me was the best direction I'd ever gotten from anyone. And I've worked with some wonderful directors, but he was raised in foster homes and youth authorities, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, as long as I can remember, there are two things that I do when I meet someone new or I'm in a new environment. And don't take it personal. I look to see what I can kill them with without them knowing it. And right now there's stuff, standards or whatever's that are on the set. I look for a nearby thing, whether it's a phone or a lamp, and I look to see, as I'm talking to them, what I can steal, watch or whatever. And it's constant, a constancy. Talk about subtext. In other words, what they're really thinking, and what how I can do damage quickly, steal what they have on them, and get out. And I did that throughout the movie. So I feel strongest about maybe that performance than anything else I've ever done. And I did it constantly in every scene. I started to do it in life. And if you do it, anyone can do it. You don't have to be an actor. If you're meeting with someone and you're just kind of, as you're watching, you're just kind of observing what you could pick up and kill them, hit them with. If your behavior changes, you're altered in a very subtle way. In Tootsie, I wanted to suspend their belief as little as possible, as opposed to a great farce like Some Like It Hot, where they're all in falsetto. I didn't want to do that. I wanted an audience to say, yeah, okay, maybe I would get fooled. I did fool some people in life, which is other stories. But one of the things I was aware of is this, I couldn't get the voice right. There was an actress that was on TV a lot called B. Arthur in the 80s when we were making Tootsie, and she had a very low voice. And I said, well, maybe I'll have a low voice. And then someone told me about this woman who was a speech therapist, I think at UCLA, and I was in Los Angeles, and she said something to me, my God, she said, this was the 80s, and I'm not sure it's unfortunately that much different today. And she said, women tend to always ask permission to be in a conversation. Men, and you're included, tend to want to find a solution. Men always, with the phallic finger are saying, here's what you do. And women many times are asking for permission rather than saying, here's what you have to do. Well, what do you think of this? I said, what are you saying? She says, we tend to end it in a question. May I, so that the subtext is, may I say something? Can I make a contribution? It's a way of trying to be on the same level. It's actually, a kind of finer intelligence, because they know how threatened we men can be and how easily threatened we can be. So they come in on soft, with soft shoes. And then she said that, plus she says, your vocal cords are thicker. So if you don't want to be falsetto, she says, try to somehow don't put all the weight of your breathing on the vocal cords, so that, or when you're talking, so that you're saying, well, perhaps it could be this. So rather than B, falsetto, you're somewhere there. And then if you're combining that with, what do you think of this? My name is Dorothy. So it was an attempt, but it did something psychologically, which I didn't realize would happen, and that is the may I. May I say something? Do you mind if I talk? Do you mind if I try to be considered an equal also? We're not that, we men. Oh, fuck that. Oh, bullshit. When we finally got the costume right, I went down to my daughter, who's now 44. She was, she's probably 12 or 13. I went down to her school in New York City when we were doing a screen test of the character. And I told her that I wanted to meet her teacher. She says, Dad, why'd you come down here all dressed as a woman? She was, it was terrible of me to do that. But I said, no, I want to see her again. Introduce me as your aunt from Arkansas or whatever. I wanted to see if I could pass. And she did, and I did pass. And that gave me great feeling of confidence.